All right, guys, real quick, we're going to talk about reducing fractions. So reducing fractions is very simple. A lot of students are nervous about it because it involves division, but it is necessary. The reason it's necessary is a fraction problem, the answer is not considered correct until you reduce it, if you can. You won't always be able to. So let's say you perform some kind of operation, multiplying, adding, whatever, with fractions, and you got this answer 6/8. Great. But the problem is you're not done because 6/8 can be reduced. Now, if you don't have your times tables memorized, there's a couple tricks and shortcuts we can use using our multiplication chart and using our calculator. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the factors of 6. The factors are the numbers that fit inside of 6 without a remainder. It fits in there evenly. Now there's a couple shortcuts here, a couple hints really. The first one is your numerator will always be a factor. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 6 right here. Now along with that is your numerator is also going to be your largest factor. What I mean by that is once you write down your numerator as a factor, you don't need to look at any other numbers larger than your numerator. So in this case, our numerator is 6. So I'm going to start at 5 on my times table. I'm going to come up here so you can see here, because there was 6 right there, 6 and 1. So I'm going to start at the 5, and I'm just looking at the answers. Camera lens is over here. So I'm just looking at the answers. 5 does not have a 6 with it. 4 does not have a 6 with it. 3 does have a 6 with it. So 3 is a factor. Now I'm going to look at 2. 6 does go with 2. So 2 is one of our factors. Now, yes, 1 is a factor of 6. 1 is always going to be a factor, but we don't use it. The reason we don't use it is because when you divide by 1, nothing changes. So 6 divided by 1 would be 6. We wouldn't reduce it in any way. So we have 6, 3, and 2. Now we're going to divide. And we're going to start with the largest one because the goal is we want to put the largest factor into our denominator. So I'm going to try 8 divided by 6. Now you can see here I've got a decimal number. If you have a decimal number, it means that that is not a factor. So I'm going to cross off the 6 and I'm going to move to the 3. 8 divided by 3. Okay, once again, you can see we got a decimal number. So 3 won't work. So finally, we're going to try the 2. 8 divided by 2. And we get 4. So I can divide 8 by 2 and get 4. Well, remember the rules for fractions. What I do to one, I have to do to the other. So because I divided the 8 by 2, I also have to divide the 6 by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. This is my final answer. I turned 6/8 into 3/4. Let's take a look at another one that I'm going to work just a little bit faster. Okay, on this one I've set up 5/20. So just like before, and this one's going to be a little bit easier, or I should say a little bit faster to solve because of our numerator. So our numerator is 5, so that's a factor. So once again, I'm going to look at my multiplication chart. I've written down the 5, so I'm going to go to 4. And I'm going to look down at the answers. There's no 5 with 4, no 5 with 3, no 5 with 2. So we're done. 5 is the only factor that matters for 5. So I'm going to see now if I can divide that into 20. So we're going to do 20 divided by 5. Remember, the denominator goes first. And we got 4. And then, of course, 5 divided by 5 is 1. So 5/20 is just 1/4. Let's take a look at something involving this fraction. What if that numerator had been just a little bit different? Okay, this time I have 5/22. So again, we're going to put 5, and like we talked about in the last example, 5 is the only factor. So we're going to go ahead and try to divide that into 22. So 22 divided by 5. Got a decimal number, 4.4. So 5 does not divide into this denominator evenly. That means, and because we don't have any more factors, that means that 5 over 22 is already the reduced form. We also call that lowest terms. So you need to double check on everything to see if you can reduce it by dividing the factors, because you might not be able to. Sometimes you're going to be able to reduce a fraction, sometimes you're not. Most of the time you're going to be able to. In 6th grade math, you're usually going to be able to reduce a fraction. But like with this, sometimes you won't be able to. Okay, so I've got two fractions here. Right now, let's look at this one, 1 over 8. This is the first instance where you wouldn't try to reduce. Don't worry about finding factors. You really couldn't in this case, but don't worry about trying to reduce this. And that's if your numerator is 1. The reason is the only factor of 1 is 1. So you would only be able to divide by 1, and as we talked about before, if you divide by 1, nothing changes. So if your numerator is 1, you're done. Do not try to reduce it. Now, let me draw your attention over here. We have 17 over 18. This is another example that you cannot reduce. The reason is your numerator is only 1 digit away from your denominator. So if your numerator is 1 away from the denominator, you can't reduce it. Don't even worry about finding your factors. So these are two examples of when that would occur. There is a third time that that could happen, and that's if your numerator is 0. It's rare you're going to see that, though. So really, these two examples right here are the ones that you really need to commit to memory on. Don't even try to reduce. But this is one as well, but it's rare you're going to see that. All right, guys, real quick before I close it down, I wanted to talk about reducing when you have an improper fraction that you've converted to a mixed number. Just because you've converted an improper fraction, which you can see I've done here, I had 14 over 6, and I converted that to 2 and 2/6. We can still reduce this possibly, and you need to check it. If you don't remember how I got from here to here, look back at the video on how to convert an improper fraction into a mixed number. But 14 over 6 converts into 2 and 2/6. So even though it's a mixed number, I'm going to still treat this fraction part just like every other fraction and see if I can reduce it. So I'm going to look for the factors of 2. That's very simple because the only thing that's going to fit into 2 is 2. So just like before, I'm going to try to fit the 2 inside of the 6. So 6 divided by 2, and it does fit. It fits in there 3 times. And because I did something to the denominator, I do the same thing to the numerator. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now with this integer, we just bring it over. So our final answer is 2 1/3. So once again, really important, if you convert an improper fraction to a mixed number, you still need to check and see if you can reduce the fraction part of your mixed number. That's about it, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. See you later. 1 doesn't change. So if we used 1, it wouldn't reduce. Nothing would change. So now I'm going to...
It's now 3:53 and you should be in your tutoring classroom. If you are not attending tutorials, you must exit the building through the main entrance at this time. Thank you.
Okay.